the best thing about living the life of a musician is that there's always possibility ahead of you.
This is Joe Wong. Welcome to the Trap Set. I want to play something for you. You're hearing The Rhino by Quasi, featuring my guest, Janet Weiss, on drums. For nearly 30 years, Janet's powerful swinging groove has made an indelible impact on rock music, both as a band member of Quasi, Sleater-Kinney, and Wild Flag, and as a drummer for hire with top-tier songwriters such as Elliott Smith, Stephen Malkmus, and Connor Oberst. Janet also went toe-to-toe with Zach Hill and Matt Cameron on the experimental percussion album Drumgasm. 2019 has been an unusually eventful year for Janet. She left Sleater-Kinney after over 20 years in the band, and soon after suffered a major car accident. I spoke to her at her home in Portland, where she expects to make a full recovery. And now my conversation with an artist of immense creative integrity and one of the all-time great drummers, Janet Weiss.
Well, I wasn't really into local music as like a teenager. As a teenager, or as a young teenager, and maybe like a 10-year-old, I would just listen to the radio. We had the station KHJ, AM, Gold, and that was my musical education. Sly and the Family Stone, then you hear a Bob Dylan song, then you hear Joni Mitchell, then you hear Kiss, like very diverse compared to now, as far as radio. Now people stream and they have that diversity, which I think is awesome. To hear things next to each other that don't always make total sense. I don't know, I felt like I had a well-rounded education in music just from that one station.
I used to have a studio in Hollywood over on Argyle and Selma, and Joe Plummer came over once, and he pointed to a building on Hollywood Boulevard, and he's like, Janet's dad used to work there.
Yeah, that's funny.
Right by the Pantages.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What did your dad do?
My dad became a lawyer late in life. He worked for Union Oil for many years, this Union 76. When the Mini Mart was first conceptualized, he was the person that went out to the gas station and explained the Mini Mart to the gas station owners. I guess there were franchises, and got them installed, and and then he became fed up with that and decided to become a lawyer at 45, maybe 45. He was about 40, I think, when I was born. I was the third kid, so I was my parents were already kind of old by the time I was born.
And so that was his law office then on Hollywood?
Mm-hmm.
Was he in entertainment?
He was, no, but his office was in the Motown building. So, and I do remember once he borrowed Berry Gordy's, maybe it was Berry Gordy Jr., Berry Gordy's yellow convertible Mercedes 450 SL, and we got crammed in there and drove around Hollywood in this car. That was as close to Motown as I ever got. Besides the Motown beat, which I play all the time. But yeah, I was born in the what is now the Scientology.
Oh, that's funny.
Building.
My friend Anna Warniker was born over there too.
Is that Joey's sister?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Joey. Joey's a good old bud.
He was on this show, and his first memory was being in that building when Anna was being born.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I don't remember it because I was a baby, but it is funny to, you kind of can see it from everywhere. And
I knew you were touched.
Yeah, special. Before it was Scientology. Important note.
Was your family religious at all?
No. My parents are, my dad's passed away, but my parents are Jewish, but not religious.
So you didn't have like a bat mitzvah or anything like that?
No, we celebrated Christmas and no discussions about God, no discussions about spirituality.
Did you think about that stuff when you were young?
Maybe spirituality, but not religion. I went to a Catholic school from 7th grade to 12th grade, like a private Catholic school on Franklin and Western.
Yeah, I used to live right by there. Yeah,
that was my school. So I thought of it, I would go to the liturgies where they had live music, and I thought the music was cool. So,
really? Okay.
Yeah, and they said I could sit in the library, and I didn't. I wasn't required to attend, but I like the songs. It was fun. People sang, and so I still know those songs, but they aren't attached to like any meaning, really.
Well, did they make you take theology class there?
We studied religion, not just the Catholic religion. So we studied. Yeah, we had a religion class.
That's funny. I used to walk by that school every day on my way to my studio. So interesting.
Yeah. Yes. And I went to Cherimoy Avenue School, which was right down the street. You might have walked by that too. Yeah, I was a real Hollywood kid. But when you say you're not a fan of the music of that era, are you referring to the hair metal?
Yeah, but maybe you were leaving before that it was even taking off?
That's actually my least favorite genre of music, is hair metal. Maybe because I was growing up, driving by the Troubadour and seeing those people out there. Yeah, it was a real scene. I just was too young. I was too young to. When I finally started going to music, I had my sister's fake ID, and I would go to like Club Lingerie and see X and Dream Syndicate. That was one of my favorite bands before I went to college.
Where did you go to college?
SF State. So I graduated. My birthday's in September, so I was like younger than everyone in my class. And I graduated when I was 17 from high school, and
in 83?
83, and I just immediately went to San Francisco. I never fit in LA very well.
What would that have meant to fit in?
Look good in a bathing suit and drive a BMW and
well, you did drive a yellow Mercedes.
Only once for about 45 minutes. I feel like there were two factions in LA when I was growing up. There was the industry, which even as a kid, I could feel that sort of like the requirements to be in, in movies or in the movie, this sort of looks-based culture for women especially, like being beautiful, having a really good figure, and being like attractive to people. And when you're a teenager, it's like, I just didn't, I didn't feel like that. And
most teenagers don't feel like that, though, right?
I guess not. But I went to that all-girl Catholic school, and there were just those girls that just had it all together. They probably burned out really fast. By 22, their lives were kind of over. But in high school, I just...
Have you been to a high school reunion?
No. No way.
You didn't want to find out if they burned out and to what extent?
No way. But my high school was fine. I had fine high school year. I started getting into the Clash and my all-time favorite band. And,
the Clash?
Yeah.
Were you playing drums yet?
No. I wasn't playing drums till I was 22. So I was a music fan. And
did you have a sense for what you wanted to do when you grew up?
No, not at all. Not at all. I was that person that went off to college not really knowing, like trying to take... I knew I loved film and photography, so I started taking as many of those classes as I could, just sort of ignoring the fact that, like, I need to be taking all these requirements too. So I had to do all those at the end. But yes.
But you finished.
Yeah, so film and photography, that's what I focused on, and I sort of use those things in my job.
As a location scout?
Yeah, in my day job. So it all came around full circle, and those were always things that were interesting to me. Even being in a band, like, I love doing the T-shirts. I love visual stuff. I like thinking about the album covers, and yeah, I'm just a visual kind of communicator. Not so verbal, more visual.
Can you remember the first time you played drums?
Yes. Yeah, I can remember. So I took one lesson on a drum pad from a guy named Rich Ferguson. He's a poet, and he was also the drummer in this band Blue Movie in San Francisco, who I went to see. I started going to see live music in San Francisco, and there was much less of a barrier between the band and the people who came to the show. It all sort of meshed together, and I guess I was just at the right age where I sort of saw myself in these performers. It wasn't so much like being in LA and looking up at this stage at John Doe and Exene, these, larger than life characters that I thought I could never, ever be that cool, no matter what I did. But when I got to San Francisco...
Which is funny because they were supposed to be an antidote to something else.
I'm sure, but they were so cool. They were just so... And they were...
Were you a DJ fan as well? DJ Bone
Yeah,
Break?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved the Meat Puppets too, and the SST bands, and just marveled. I loved George Hurley. I loved George Hurley with it. The hair flip. And
he still has that hair too, by the way. He does. He came on the show a couple years ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
He's a construction guy now. And I guess he always has been, even when the Minutemen was happening.
I can see.
But he does contracting, and his hair was slicked back, and I think they called it the unit, right? His hair. And I said, "What happened to the unit?" He's like, "Oh, I still have it." And he pulled it down. It was really great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I would go talk to him after shows, like right when Fire Hose started, and then they were playing small places, and I would talk to George Hurley, and I just can remember my heart just like in my throat, like I have to, what can I say that's not going to sound stupid? I was like the kid that like went to the sound check. I would tag along with my big sisters and go to the sound check.
So your sisters were into cool music.
They were into good music. Yeah. They introduced me to some cool stuff. We snuck into Elvis Costello sound check at the Greek Theater, and I snuck into the REM sound check at the Palladium. Embarrassing stuff like that. But like kids
That's cool. That's not embarrassing.
Kids would sneak into Sleater-Kinney sound checks, and certain band members might not have liked them to be there, and I'd be like, "That's me! Like, don't kick them out." That was me, absolutely me, 100%. And they're not hurting anybody. Just let them stay. Come on. So yeah, I'm still that kid in a way,
Well, but coming back to the first time you played drums.
Oh yeah, okay. So I took the lesson on the pad from Rich Ferguson. And then somehow word got out to this band called the Furies, these 3 girls that I had seen play, but I didn't know them personally. He was friends with them, and he told them that he'd given me this lesson, that I was learning how to play the drums, and their drummer couldn't go on tour with them, so they got the idea that they would ask me to go on tour with them. This gives you an idea of what the band maybe was like, that they would take someone who had never sat down at a drum kit. But they came over, and we hung out in the living room and talked for a while, and they were like, "Yeah, we want you to be in our band." And I thought, well, I've never played a drum kit before. And they're like, "Well, it's okay. Like, take 2 weeks. Here's our record. Check it out. See what you think. We'll come back in 2 weeks and see if you feel like you can do it." So I borrowed a drum kit. Do you know who Chuck Prophet is? Guitar.
Yes.
Yeah, from Green on Red. I borrowed a drum kit from him. I went over, and he said, "You only need one beat. That's it. You just have to learn one beat." It was ironic because later there's an album called One Beat, but he's like, just learn one beat, just the 4 on the floor, And that's it. You could, like, that's rock and roll. You can play, you adapt it and you make it work for everything. So that seemed not so overwhelming. And I borrowed his drum kit and set it up in my apartment and sat down and I looked out my bay window and I just tried to learn this record. The Furies, Fun Around the World was the name of the record.
It's interesting because when you talk about going to see Firehose, you're talking about speaking to George Hurley, not Mike Watt. I mean, was there a part of you that always wanted to play drums? And like, what was the impetus to take that lesson to begin with?
Yeah, I think I just sensed a certain camaraderie with the role of the drummer, the sort of underdoggy, like you're in the back, but you're super important. And little did I know that truly, my impression of what the drummer was like kind of spot on.
So,
even though I didn't know much about being a drummer, I just watched the drummer.
Can you elaborate on that more? Like, how would you define the role of a drummer?
I think there's a lot about being a drummer that nobody really knows what the drummer does except your bandmates. Like, drummers don't get a whole lot of credit for songs. I can't tell you the amount of times I've gotten to practice and sat down in my kit and the guitar player will turn around and say, okay, play a beat. So you've been like, I practice on my own. I have a bunch of beats that I work on. Like, okay, I'll try this one. I just whip one out and then they write their part and then you work to make it a song. And I don't think that's seen as being a songwriter. I just think you're the drummer, so you're just... you're
accompanying.
Yeah, it's just a perception, it's like what goes on behind the curtain. People just don't really know. And
it's also a role that some people embrace,
Yeah.
And it just... You're talking about a more collaborative setting, whereas sometimes, drummers would show up and there would be a chart in front of them and then they would just play the music.
This is my experience of like the kind of bands that I was into.
Yeah, like more of like at least
bands,
ostensibly
like real
democracies
bands.
or families.
Yeah. Real bands where like everyone's important. Mm-hmm. Those are the bands I loved. I mean, Sonic Youth, bands where there's 4 distinct voices and... Soundgarden, like Matt Cameron's as much of a songwriter as anyone else in the band.
Absolutely.
Even, in Pearl Jam, just in all the bands he's in. And
not even just the songs that he writes for those bands,
no, I mean,
but
like
his
the
part is just as instrumental to the song as the vocal part.
And listening to his drums, that he has ideas about arranging, he has ideas about how the song should go, he has ideas about the intro, the outro, it, like you can hear it. And I like that we're like this little club, that like we've got each other's backs because we know what's happening. And it's nice to just have people acknowledge you, and that's usually the other drummers.
And you felt that calling, and then after a certain time, you had to take a lesson and start manifesting it.
I mean, I just would always watch the drummer. Mm-hmm. And this guy, Rich, played standing up, and it was kind of crazy, San Francisco 80s, like poetry, and I don't know, I just thought, I want to learn the drums. Like, that seems primal and kind of like it suits me. And I wasn't thinking anything like this is going to be where my life takes me. I just thought it would be fun. So,
when did you start calling yourself a drummer?
Oh, boy.
Or feeling like you were a drummer?
Yeah.
Like, this is my thing.
Well, I knew it was my thing because our third show was in Vancouver, BC.
So you went on tour after 2 weeks.
I went on tour after 2 weeks. The first show we played, first or second, was upstairs in the dining area of the Fillmore, while the Replacements were playing the main stage. So it was like they had these shows on these little, I mean, the stage is like as big as this table. And
You mean in the balcony area?
it's like, it's like it's where all the posters are.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the poster showroom. But it's also where you eat. Like if you're playing there, that's like the dining area. There's a kitchen there. There's this tiny little stage, and I guess people must have been able to get drinks up there. Because in between sets, you would play your show, like while the replacements were setting up. And I think that was my second show. The third show was in Vancouver, BC with the Flaming Lips of 1987, this must have been. And yeah, I still know those guys. Stephen Droz wasn't in the band yet. It was this guy, Richard, playing drums. And I specifically remember the sound check. I mean, I knew I was bad. It's not like I'd watched all the drummers. Like I knew I didn't know what I was doing. I just remember watching that sound check and just feeling so mortified. Like, how am I going to get up there? Like, what am I going to do? He's so good. He's just powerful and fast and quick. And I just started. So
Well, that's kind of amazing that you had the confidence to even get up there.
yeah, it's like, I guess it wasn't so much confidence. It's just, I'm just like a doer person. I just do stuff. That's how I learn everything, is I have to just do it. And I remember that my bandmate Jenny Joseph, it was her band, and she wouldn't tell me what the first song was. And I just begged her, like, just tell me what the first song is so I can prepare.
You mean like the idea is she wanted it to be spontaneous?
Very spontaneous. We jammed. There was a song called Arts and Crafts, and we improvised. And like real bands just were so enamored. It was like the Shags. Like you couldn't, once you pass that level of playing, it's that innocence and like you're just trying so hard, but you're so terrible at your instrument.
When you become self-conscious, basically.
Yeah, and you just get too good. Like to play like that would be fake for like, you know.
It would be like an adult talking like a toddler.
Exactly.
But when you see a toddler talking
It's
like
cute.
a toddler, it's amazing.
And people like Wayne, it was so charming to people like that, you know? So yeah, that tour was really great. And I think I just got the bug for touring. I liked traveling in the van. I love driving.
Do you remember how it felt when you got the bug? Like in your body?
Yeah, it kind of felt like, even though I had just started, I felt like this was for me. Mm-hmm. This was, I finally found something that felt right to me, even though I was a little embarrassed that I couldn't play better. But that was motivating for sure. Like to be on tour right away, it was just those humbling moments. Like soundcheck was just a source of great anxiety because it's all this unspoken language that everybody knows.
Right.
I remember
All right,
once.
let me get the kick.
I remember once in Brighton, this band opening for Sleater-Kinney, they were doing their sound check, and the sound person said to the drummer, "Okay, give me kick, snare, hat," and she just played all of them at the same time. And I just was like, "Oh, I remember that." I remember not knowing, you know, what kick, snare, hat meant, you know, but it's like this language that it's a club, you know, once you're in, it's all shorthand, but when you're just starting, you have to learn what it all means.
Earlier you were talking about kind of typical phases of development when it comes to being a musician and getting past this phase of innocence and becoming more self-aware and wanting to get good. So when did you enter into that phase and how did it manifest? Like, what did you do to get so good?
I just remember at the 5-year mark that I could play a roll on the snare, like not like a double stroke roll or nothing fancy, but I could play a snare roll, which for the music that I love, kind of high energy music, that seemed like a tool you just had to have. I still don't think I felt like a drummer. I still don't think I would have said, "Oh yeah, I'm a drummer." Like, you know.
What would you have answered if someone would have said, "What do you do?"
I'm sure I had a job, and I'd say, "Well, I work a job, but I also play the drums."
What kind of jobs were you working at that time?
I worked in at this weekly newspaper taking classified ads. for many years, 4 years in San Francisco, and then 4 more years when I moved to Portland.
What brought you to Portland?
The dream of having a house and a basement and a dog and a band and a recording studio in the bedroom.
And you pretty much achieved all of those things.
Yeah. It actually wasn't that hard here. Those things.
There was never any thought of going back home to LA.
Never.
After that.
No, never. Not now. I think it's.
You could take your location scouting skills to LA.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I am a lot happier here. Mm-hmm. Something about
feels
LA.
Good up here.
Yeah, it feels good. It's just, there isn't that. I think I just grew up feeling on the outside of, the industry and like all the cool stuff that was going on there and people working on their demos. And like, I never felt a part of what was happening. So I still get that feeling when I'm there, even though I think it's really pretty. I like the way it looks, and I like the hills and the ocean, and the scenery is pretty neat, but I don't feel great there. I love New York. Like, I could see myself living in New York, although I never have, and I probably at this point it's too late.
Maybe if you get some Russian oil money, you can get an apartment there.
I think my New York window has come and gone, but I have spent a lot of time there, and it's New York. It's awesome.
So you moved up here. You were working at the weekly newspaper.
Yeah, I got that job. So I got here. I'd saved up money. Sam and I moved here together, and
you met Sam in San Francisco?
Yeah, he was in a band called Donner Party that I loved. They were like it was like Camper Van Beethoven and Donner Party, and I loved those bands. And I would just kind of stalk him and follow him around, and eventually he came and saw my second band, which was called Ed. And
I should mention Sam is Sam Coombs.
Sam Coombs, yes, from Quasi.
Plays in Quasi with you.
Yeah.
You guys were married for a while.
We were married. We moved here together and then got married in 1990. And we were married for like 4 years. And then we split up, but the band stayed together and had 2 pretty difficult years of, a relationship splitting up, but the band trying to keep it together. And
it's kind of extraordinary that you did that.
It was hard. And I just remember at the time saying to Sam that I really wanted the band to stay together. And I just thought, let's just try. I think we should really try. I think it's extremely special and we should try. And he gave it a go. And after a few years, it got a lot better and easier. And he met his wife, who he's still married to, and they're just soulmates. And it all worked out. And then once that happens, and it's like, oh, this is all for good reason. Like if we hadn't have broken up, you wouldn't have met, the person who you were meant to be with.
But and then you're still attached in a really intimate way as bandmates and friends.
Yeah. I mean, he's like my brother. He's my family. Like, I rely on him. I rely on him spiritually, probably more than almost anybody. He's kind of my moral compass. And he's just a great person. He's very solid in his, what he believes and what he cares about. But he also just lets everybody else be who they are.
I don't know if this is true, but when I see Quasi play, it seems like you have this kind of effortless connection with one another. Mm-hmm. Has that always been the case?
I think so. I think that's why we kept it together. We both listened to tons of music, saw lots of music, and I think we recognized that connection, even knowing that it was going to be hard to split up and keep it together. And I guess maybe not being sure if it would survive, the connection would survive. But it did, and it only gets kind of better with time. There's just certain things that a band that's been together 25 years can do that a new band can't. Like you learn each other in a way that's really powerful.
It almost seems like you have your own language.
Yeah.
But I wonder if that was always the case. Like when you first met, can you remember first playing together and it clicking in right away? Or were you bandmates first, or romantic partners first?
We were in a relationship and then very quickly started playing music. But we were both in other bands. So when we moved to Portland, that was part of the plan. The master plan was to move to Portland,
get a house,
rent a house, get a studio. You know, we bought a Fostex 8-track, 1/4 inch.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. And we just got into it. We just happened to arrive in Portland at the absolute perfect time to be doing that, and the people we met, the people we played music with, and, Elliott Smith coming over and using our recording equipment, and we'd go down and, if we felt like we needed to get a better, in quotes, drum sound, we'd go down to Larry Crane's studio and
Larry Crane, who has Tape Op magazine.
Yeah, he had a little basement studio called Laundry Rolls. We'd cruise over there. We'd go to Jackpot once he set that up, and it was, I'm so thankful that we stumbled into this community. We had met, I think Rebecca Gates was like Rebecca Gates and Jeremy Wilson from the Dharma Bums were the two people that we knew when we got here, and Rebecca was so kind and introduced us to everybody, and there were other people moving here at the same time, and then all the people who had already lived here, Sean Krogan of Cracker Bash, and Joanna Bolmy, who I ended up playing in a bunch of bands with, and she played in Quasi, and she's in the Jicks, and everything just started sort of overlapping in a way that was, made for a really great young adulthood.
Did you feel like did you feel like that in the moment too? Like you found a community that made sense to you?
Yeah.
Like what you'd always missed in LA, you found up here?
Totally. Because San Francisco felt more like people weren't looking through you, but they were looking, like actually at who you are and taking that into consideration, and
right.
They wanted to know what you felt about things, and not so much like
what can you do for me?
I just felt in LA like people would look me up and down and then look away, and that there was no further exploration of like who I was as a person. And then when I got to San Francisco, I felt like, oh, this is a very like deep place where people are doing work, and like collaborating, and this history of writers and poets and visual artists. And then when I got to Portland, it was like living amongst people doing the same things as we were trying to do. And maybe not in the exact same way, but we had the same limitations on us. We didn't have any money. We worked day jobs. But we wanted to make records and make music, and we all kind of together figured out how to do it. There wasn't like a rule book for it. It was just that sort of indie rock was being born, at that time. And there was tons of great music being made.
And were you thinking anything beyond that, or were you perfectly happy with the way things were?
I was perfectly happy. When Sam and I we wanted to make records that like sounded good, but I don't think we really, I can remember, reading about microphones, or when Tape Op first started, like, I bought a 1-inch Atari 8-track, like a huge refrigerator of a tape deck, and
50/50.
And and just like, so I was dabbling in like, getting good sounds, and that was important to us. But I think it was just like like our favorite hobby. Like we were doing what we loved, and you could go on tour and make a little bit of money and come back and you'd get your job, work your day job again. It wasn't until I joined Sleater-Kinney and that I started like doing it full time, like as a job. I was in a band called Junior High with Joanna Bolmy from the Jicks.
By the way, I was in a band also called Junior High in Milwaukee in like 1995.
We should have
totally
had a Junior
oblivious.
High off.
Yeah.
And Sean Krogan from Cracker Bash was the front man, great front man, still playing music, and he's a painter now. He's amazing. But we opened for Sleater-Kinney upstairs at La Luna in the small venue. Upstairs, probably like 250 capacity. I bought Call the Doctor, their album, and I just remember going home. I've told the story. I remember going home and for some reason listening to that record and thinking, I could be in this band. Like something about the aggressiveness of it that I really related to. And just how angular and kind of tough it sounded. But through my work, at that point I was working at this ad agency as an art buyer, which is like a photo producer, which I didn't know how to do, but I was just totally winging it. I liked photography and I needed a job, and it was a decent paying job. And my friend got me the job, and someone at work, this friend of mine, Marnie, had done hair and makeup for like a shoot with Donna Drash and Carrie, and heard that they were looking to replace their drummer. It wasn't their original drummer. They had their original drummer who played on the album, first two albums, lived in Australia. So they had this other drummer, and they wanted to replace her. And like someone gave Carrie or Corin my phone number, and Corin called and said, "Hey, do you want to come over and work on, play some music?" It's very simple. And I didn't know them. I liked it, what I saw when I saw their show. I thought they were really excellent.
How would you describe the dynamic of that band versus Quasi?
Well, I think the two of them have that like soulmate telepathy, same language thing that Sam and I had. So I recognized it when I saw it, and it was sort of my goal to like just make the music better, like do what I could to like heighten what they were doing, because they were already doing something really cool. And the dynamic, I'm a little older than them, and the dynamic just felt like a freight train, really. Just three people who sometimes had different perspectives on things, but who could get on the same page and just really wanted to up the ante on what women had done as musicians and follow in the footsteps of all these women that we admired, and just sort of do them proud, and push this idea of what women are capable of just into the stratosphere. So it was very much like a very fast moving machine, whereas Quasi was more of like a conversation between the two of us. Sleater-Kinney's like the two of them are having a conversation and I'm just like powering it, from behind, just like go, 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 go.
Earlier, you described a real band dynamic as almost like a family where everybody's contributing. So as the band progressed, what did you see your role as creatively?
Yeah, as we progressed, I mean, by the time I think I always think of my role as an equal, creative equal. I wouldn't stay in a band for 20 years that I didn't feel like I was creative equal. What I love is those, when a song originates, I prefer to be there to help have my personality be a part of it. Those are my favorite bands where you hear everybody in there and you can't just take someone out, which is interesting to talk about that now because I have taken myself out. But
it's almost like if you came home from school one day and there was a different mom with no explanation. It's like, well, but she's a woman. She's a mom. It doesn't make sense. Like it's a family and you're part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I felt like the three of us were equals and the three of us all had ideas, and that's how I wanted it to be forever. I wanted it to be the three of us as equals, and things to be decided with all of us chiming in and all of our ideas being important. That's how we made our best music, I thought. That's how, even the songs that, they play a lot of old songs in the set now. And I just think those songs were made just to get up and go. Those songs are powerful songs because all of us firing 100%.
How would it work when you would write songs together?
Sometimes they would work on something together and then come in and then we would, put the drums on. They rarely would come in with a whole song start to finish. They usually didn't have any lyrics or vocals until the music was more developed. And then they would kind of sing. We would play at practice and improvise and kind of jam out parts. Like, we need a bridge. Let's, play a beat. And I play a beat and then we'd write the bridge. But they would sing without lyrics. But to me, it sounded like they had lyrics,
like phonetic sounds.
Phonetics, yeah. And so we would do a lot of playing together, usually. That wasn't the case on the last album. And that was really difficult for me to, write that caliber of music. Like, to me, the band was just the three of us together. So to write separately on a garage band with in a Dropbox folder was really tough for me. And it just didn't suit it didn't make me feel very involved. I'm very tactile and I had done a lot of home recording in my past. But even that was done with the people in proximity, So that wasn't, in that instance, it wasn't really that was not a recording or writing experience that I enjoyed very much.
I mean, it makes sense because for the bulk of history, music has been a means of connection. So if you're doing it in a vacuum, it kind of takes away the fun.
Yeah, it was hard for me. It was like the message was, this is about connection and this is about love and this is about friendship. But Sleater-Kinney became so painfully lonely for me. And part of it was just that this method of writing was dictated to me, this is how we're going to do it. And I just wasn't feeling loved, or I wasn't feeling the connection. I wasn't feeling it's so vulnerable when you try to create that if you feel disassociated and disconnected, it's almost impossible.
Well, it requires a lot of trust
It does.
allow yourself to be that vulnerable
Yeah.
with other people. And you can't make great music unless you allow yourself to be that vulnerable.
Yeah, you have to be vulnerable. And it just kind of became a situation where I didn't feel safe enough to be vulnerable like that.
Well, let's back it up, though. I want to get to that, but
Yeah.
was there a time when you were super happy with that band?
Oh, yeah. Tons of super happy. I mean, 24 years and most of it super happy. Mm-hmm. Most of it super happy. And yeah, it was very high powered, which I loved. You know, we were just three like kind of go-getters. You know, we wanted the band to be successful. We wanted to go on tour, and I really wanted to connect with the audience, and we just had this chemistry that immediately was kind of off the charts. And, you know, those two already had their relationship, and that, you know, that allowed me to just step in and kind of, in my way, kind of figure out what it needed. Like, what does this need to really push it to the next level? And through my experience with Quasi and my experience with music that I had worked on and what I had seen live and all those shows that I went to and bands that I love, like the Minutemen, you know, like I just found the way to make it happen. And that's, you know, that's one of my strengths, I think. And I bet there's a lot of drummers that's their strength, is to kind of see what it needs and do it, you know? And yeah, super happy for most all of the years.
You know, another thing that I think is common among drummers is this type of empathy where you can see what people need and give it to them.
Yeah. Well, you know, you're not... I so admire the front person.
Yeah.
But they are sort of lost in their kind of, you know, their creativity, and they're putting themselves on the front line.
Yes.
The drummer is more protected, more able to watch what's
like
going on.
literally protected by an instrument.
And literally behind, you know, the people, you know, your bandmates. So you are actually watching them more than they're watching you. You know, they'll turn around every now and then, but it is a very like observant role. You know, you're watching and listening, and I love improvising live. It's so exciting, you know, to kind of be driving this thing that's powering somewhere, and then to take it down, you know, and make it intimate, and then blow it up and make it huge, and just the excitement of that dynamic, that you're kind of the puppet master in a way, you know, as the drummer. You know, drums are, I like to think of them kind of high stakes. Like, if you do it well, it's, you know, people in your band are going to notice. If you screw up, everybody's going to notice too. Like, they're going to give you the stink eye. But I found that I just was chomping at the bit every night to get out there and play. I don't really get very nervous. Some people get real nervous before they go on stage, but I just can't wait. Just like, get me out there. I just sit down with the drums and I feel really calm, and like, that's where I'm supposed to be. It's intense. It's really intense. There's nothing else like that.
So what changed in this band?
Well,
I mean, first of all, you were together for a long time, longer than most bands.
Yeah.
But what changed?
the roles changed within the band, and they told me the roles changed.
How did that conversation go?
I don't want to go into super details, but they told me the roles changed, and I said, "Am I just the drummer now?" And they said, "Yes."
Oh.
And I said, "Am I a creative equal? And can you tell me that I'm still a creative equal in the band?" They said no. So I left.
Did you have to think about it much?
I thought about it a lot. I thought about it a lot. I mean, I will never play with two people like that again. You know, they're totally unique, incredible, intuitive players. It's a lot to walk away from, you know. It's my sisters, you know, my family. But I couldn't be in that band and have it not be equals, especially with what it represents to me. You know, that's just... And
what does it represent to you?
It represents equality, you know, like if we can't have that in our band, how can we have that in the world? Like, how can we be fighting for equality and not have it in our band? It just became a disconnect. But I don't think they saw it like that. You know, it's not like they're not evil people. I think they just had, the two of them are so connected and they really agree on almost everything. And they just thought, we're going to take this band somewhere and we want to be in charge of that, the two of us. They didn't want... I think I was a threat to where they wanted the band to go. And just who I am. And that just felt bad to me, you know, I want them to, you know, as bandmates and partners and people I've had a relationship for all this time, I wanted to be not a threat and not someone to hold at arm's length, but someone to embrace and to go together where we wanted to go. But they had really specific ideas what they wanted, and I just didn't. I didn't fit anymore, and we were on a different page. We couldn't get on the same page, so it was really hard. It was really hard. It was not something I took lightly at all.
How did you make the decision? Like, did you make a list of pros and cons, or do any of that stuff?
I actually did. Like, we sat down. You know, we went to a counseling and tried to talk it out, which had helped before in like 1998 when we went to counseling, and that we still couldn't really get on the same page. And I made like a list and printed it out for them. Like, these are the things I would need to, you know, think about staying. And I just think it was clear that when they told me the roles have changed and that I wasn't going to be a creative equal in the making of the music, I couldn't do it anymore. The last record, the new record, you know, was made sort of without me, and it was going to be challenging to like get up there on stage and deliver those songs as if they were mine when they sort of weren't mine at all. And you know, it just got real lonely for me. But I love them, you know, and they seem happy, you know, like they're doing their thing the way they want to do it. And they don't have to, it doesn't have to be the three of us. It could be this pure thing with the two of them, which, you know, it was there, you know, it always existed, that thing.
I mean, I think lots of people would disagree and say that you were such an essential part of that band, too.
Well, I was, and I definitely was. I'm not saying I wasn't essential.
But they also have a relationship that predates your involvement.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what you're
and
saying.
Their relationship is telepathic, you know? I mean, Carrie and I played a lot of music together. We played, you know, in Wild Flag. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of telepathy there as well.
Yeah, you think you'll ever play with Mary Timony again?
I would love to. Yeah, Mary's one of my all-time heroes. You know, just...
I'd love to see that again.
Just a magical person, you know? Like, when Helium opened for Sleater-Kinney on a European tour, and I watched every sound check and every show. I did not miss a moment of Mary on stage and Ash Bowie on bass, and just the inner worlds of her, in her, just the mystery of Mary, trying to piece it all together. And every night it was something different. One night you thought she was one way, the next night she, expressed some other part of her hidden world that is just so interesting and compelling. And she's a great person and a sweetheart, as you know.
One of the best.
Since you made a record recently with her.
Yes, she's the best.
Yeah, she's the best. And I think
she's like the big sister I never had, really.
Yeah, she's a very sensitive player and person, and I mean, just one of the best guitar players you'll ever see. And there she is walking among us.
I think it's just extraordinary. If you think about everything that she's done, she just never stopped. It was Autoclave in the 80s, and then Helium, and then 4 solo records, and then Wild Flag, and then X-Hex, and assorted other projects too. I mean, it's just kind of incredible that she just keeps making things and changing.
She just is music, I can remember a few times where she maybe thought, I'm giving this up, you know? And I think when we started Wild Flag, she was maybe having doubts about, continuing this life that's tough, and like
I was on tour with her before you started that.
Sleeping on people's floors, and
she
said she was sleeping next to a cat box or something, like a litter box. And that was like the last straw.
Yeah, just like, wait, I think at the time she was maybe almost going to turn 40, and she's like, what the fuck am I doing?
The litter box syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a similar experience once in Florida. I think this was in Florida that Mary was sleeping by a cat box, but there was a time when I was playing in a band, and we were working so hard, and we were staying at these kids' house. They were college kids that put on the show, and they had a dog that they should not have had because they were not capable of taking care of the dog. And the dog had worms, and it took a poop by my sleeping bag, and there were worms crawling in it. And I was
hideous.
I think I just went out to the van and slept in the van. Life choices.
Yeah, it's like you want to be in a bed when you get to be 40. You just want a bed, That's so much to ask. And it's a good note for people who have bands sleep over at their house. Don't put the singer next to the litter box. Ugh. Like, it's not good. You might be breaking the band up.
Well, I think the larger implication is like, she shouldn't have to be staying at people's houses.
Yeah.
She should be staying in 5-star hotels.
Yeah.
If the world was just, but it's not. So there you go. But I thought it was so powerful the way that you left Sleater-Kinney, because you made this choice based on respect for yourself and what you needed to feel creative and to feel part of something. And then you left, and you didn't say a bad word about anybody, and you said really nice things about the band and your time in the band. But you had that boundary, and you left to open up the possibilities for other things.
Yeah, I think people know me to a certain extent that I wouldn't have done it, and I wouldn't have left unless I really needed to, and I have no ill will towards them at all. And it just, I want what we did together to remain like this pure thing, like I don't want to work out our disagreements in the public, and we try to work stuff out, and the three of us tried and sat down and talked about our hopes and dreams and what we wanted and how we saw things. And, I also, there are actual reasons, it's not like I did it for no reasons, but.
Well, I think you just explained them.
Yeah, I'm not interested in like trashing anybody, and I do really love those guys, and this thing that we made together, it'll live on. And I mean, those songs that we made together will always be great live, even if it's not me playing them. The song is going to stand up, and I think that's happening now. And yeah, it's like we had a thing, we had a real thing. But if roles change, like in relationships, it's natural,
Yeah.
and sometimes you have to face that, head on, that the roles have changed, and reassess. And does this still what I want? And does this still work for me?
Well, some people would have been like, "Whoa, well, now this band is poised to be bigger than ever, and maybe I'm fine with this new role. Just I'll go along with it and
did
get
try.
the commercial rewards."
I did try to see, like, well, maybe being a more auxiliary member could work for me.
Yeah, because you could have said, "Oh, well, I can get my creative kicks out with Quasi and do this and make some money and keep going and be, have fun."
Well, and I loved the band. I loved what we were capable of.
I think it's so powerful that you made that choice, because you could have compromised, but you didn't.
Well, I tried, and it just didn't work for me. There's something in that, like, that I hold on to, that, like, if we can't make our personal relationships an example of what we want the bigger world to look like, the bigger picture to look like, that to me doesn't work. And there's no amount of money that could make that worth it. So I had to make a really hard decision.
Yeah, and this is coming from somebody who's still in a band with somebody that you were married to. It's not like you're incapable of being flexible and of adjusting.
Yeah.
So it just, something was...
It just wasn't the right.
Comporting with
it wasn't
who you
the
are
right. Yeah, it
anymore.
wasn't the right fit for me anymore.
Moon stood up on the ridge, looking down where the water shines, and a man looking over the bridge, like he'd done so many times, thinking about how to stay out of trouble's way, trying to fall away from you all. It's older than vision day, beautiful division day.
Hey, folks. What you just heard is a recording of the first time I saw Janet play live with Elliott Smith at the Metro in 1998. And it still gives me chills. Anyway, as many of you know, tomorrow, Thursday, November 21st, at Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles, I'm going to be playing the first show with my new band, Night Creatures, including a few of the folks whose praises Janet sings in this episode: Matt Cameron, Mary Timoney, and Stella Mozgava. The show's almost sold out, but we just released a couple more tickets. For more information, go to joewong.org.
Right now, my hopes and dreams are to collaborate musically, to collaborate on new music, to push myself, to see what I can do. The best thing about living the life of a musician is that there's always possibility ahead of you. And, I think having this accident that I was in, this car accident that my partner Drew and I were in and survived, I honestly feel like I looked into the face of death,
What happened?
Just driving down the street and just hit by a car going really fast, like in the front tire on my side, on the driver's side, and just spun around. And that moment of spinning, and not knowing, if we were going to live or if Drew was going to live. And I was mostly just, worried about him. I just said, fuck. I just remember it happening. I had no idea it was going to happen. There was no like, here comes a car. It was just like it just happened. And in that slowed down reality of the car spinning, it was like, I felt like I was just suspended in like near death. Like, and then then the reality of what happened kind of slowly unfolded, and we were both alive, and we kind of asked, took stock, like, how's your head? How's your back? How's your, how do you feel? How's your inside? And like all the important stuff was okay. I had one of my dearest friends got hit by a car years ago, and he was walking across the street, got hit by the rearview mirror, and had just a devastating brain injury, and ended up passing away like a year later. And I think that just flashed before me, like, I just asked Drew immediately, like, how's your head? Is your head okay? Because I saw what that did to a person when you hit your head too hard. And then life got really small, and really focused on, like, I broke both my legs and my collarbone and had to have surgeries and was in the hospital, and just became like, okay, how do I get back? Like I had to really bring everything in close and focus on getting better. And I just had this incredible, team. My family, my sister came up that day, flew up here. Drew was there taking care of everything and, helping me. He's a gymnastics coach in addition to being...
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's his day job. So
wow.
In addition to being a, singer, a troubadour, he's also a gymnastics coach. So he very much was like solid, like he's, no matter how upset I would get or, like... I'm frustrated because like I'm such a physical person, and like I just had to lay in a bed, for almost 3 months, and it was really hard. But
Did it give you any sort of positive benefits with all that time to think?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the outpouring of support was just so overwhelming and life affirming, like those feelings of being lonely, like in my creative world, were just wiped away. Like I felt like I have all these people watching out for me and wishing me well, and in their thoughts. And I felt the opposite of lonesome. I just felt like really taken care of, even though physically I was just broken up. Emotionally, I think I felt better than I had in a long time, and really motivated to get better, and really motivated to just do it right and do it once and not have to do it again, and I was getting all this great advice, from people online, like I had a surgery and this is what I did and this really helped, and don't go too fast, and I know you want to get out and play, but just slow down and make sure you do it right. And so that part of the accident was, was and still is. It's like, food when you're hungry. It's like, it just feels incredible. I feel, very lucky to have survived, but also to have like all these people who had like heard my music, or like the bands that I was in, or heard my playing and like got something from it, like wanted to give back. And that just felt amazing. It wasn't that like, I have all these new friends. It was that all like we had, we could touch each other, me playing and them responding and like giving back to me. It was amazing. It was incredible. And it's, still happens. So that would definitely be a positive outcome from the accident. Just knowing that you're not alone, is pretty very life affirming experience.
And coming back to your hopes and dreams.
Yes, my hopes and dreams.
What else are you thinking about now? I mean, is there something that you haven't tried that you're raring to try?
It's funny because people ask me like, what are you going to do different? Now, you had like a near-death experience, and what are you going to do different? And I love my life, I had just made this big change, like huge life change to sort of open up my world to like, new experiences that might come, new people I might play with, projects. And I think that was there before and that's there now. I still love playing with Sam. He's been there like, for me always. And, we played yesterday and it was working on new stuff. And
you were playing real drums.
Yeah, playing my real drums, which, my drums sound so good. My drums are just perfect sounding. Especially now, like I've got them just the way I like it.
Do you still play those Cravioto drums?
No, I've always played Ludwig kits, but no, now I play one of those A&F snares.
Austin, those are made in Austin, right? Yeah,
yes. And so, and they're durable, like you can just abuse and travel. And the Craviotos, that was like my sound for so long. But it was nice to find a new kind of slightly tougher.
They look like a steampunky
almost.
Yeah,
they're very steampunk looking. I call it the steampunk snare for a while.
Or it almost looks like an old espresso machine or something.
But I guess my hopes and dreams are just to collaborate more, just more and more and more. I have a job now that I really enjoy.
A location scout.
Yeah, I'm a location manager and scout. And that started during Wild Flag era is when Carrie started doing Portlandia. Mm-hmm. So every summer she'd be working on Portlandia and we wouldn't be able to play any shows. And it was hard to go, months and months without, 4 months without playing. Financially it was tough. So I think I said, hey, get me a job on your show. And the producer, who I knew from Portland, said like, hey, I think either locations or art department. He's like, but I really think you'd be good at locations. And I just took to it, and similar to music, like jumped in and didn't know anything and had never been on a set of anything. Like I didn't know. It's a whole language, just like music, the walkies and the call sheet and like all this stuff that I had no idea what it was, but I just sort of winged it just like I did as a drummer. And eventually you learn, you just fake it till you make it. It's like the best saying. And it definitely applies to me and my life. And, but it turned out that I really enjoy the camaraderie and the team effort and the,
location scouts are kind of like drummers.
We are. It's this sort of like, the show goes on, the show must go on of like being in a touring band where the band did everything. We, got the hotels and I loved doing the itinerary, and I was like the de facto tour manager until we got a tour manager and getting directions and all the logistics of being on tour. Really, all those lessons that I learned, those things that I knew from touring, I could apply to being a location manager. I love driving and I'm visual. I love looking at stuff and I love reading the script and like imagining what these places could be. And it's really creative. You work with the director and the art director. And yeah, I was like pretty quick, like in the meetings with the director and the department heads. And I had a lot of input And that felt really, really good. It's how I like my life to be, and found a great community of people who are now my film family. And like after the accident, just, reached out and took care of me. And
Shout out to Alice Matthias.
yeah, for sure. And that's really important to me, that community and feeling like you're part of a family and that people have your back and they love you and they want what's best for you. And, I want more of that in my life. And
I think you'll get it.
and that's just
You're open to it, and you have this skill set that invites it into your life as well.
Yeah, it's what I really value.
And if you look at your history, the history of your life, those connections have always come in at the right time, it seems.
I think so.
And now that you're like consciously opening yourself to it.
Yeah.
The sky's the limit.
Yeah. I mean, I play in 2 bands now, sometimes 3 I play in Slang with Drew and Kathy Foster and just wonderful guitar player Anita. And I also play drums in Kathy's band when she feels like doing that, if she asks me. And I love collaborating with people who already have like music that's finished and then they want you to kind of like interpret it and play it live. And that's really cool too. I loved going on tour with Courtney Barnett and Kurt Vile. That was stepping in for Stella, who is my favorite living drummer.
She's just wonderful.
She's incredible.
She's
my favorite drummer, Stella Mozgawa. Everybody needs to hear her play the drums and see her play the drums. And she's more than a drummer. She's contributing so much musically.
Well, her parents are both musicians.
Yeah, she's the best.
Her mom had this band. They were like the ABBA of Poland in the
I'm not
communist
surprised.
days. They were called Pro Contra. Mm-hmm. And then her parents hatched this scheme to get out and move to Australia. So they petitioned the government to go on this like goodwill musical tour.
Smart.
And that's how they snuck away.
Smart.
And they called that band Contract.
She's everything I love in a drummer. I mean, she's reading the room. She's got her personality. You hear it, and you're like, "That's
amazing ideas."
You're like, "That's Stella," and her ideas are
incredible technique and ideas, and her technique is always in the
and
service
personality.
of the idea. Yeah, personality.
It's like personality and technique, which sometimes don't go hand in hand. But for her, she can take a beat from she can sequence a beat and then play it, and it just becomes totally human, which is a feat. And she has a great personality. I wish we weren't both drummers so we could be in the same band.
You could. Well, how do you feel about bands with 2 drummers? What if it was you and Stella?
I just think it's like there's the kick drum issue.
Yeah,
that's the issue.
That's really tricky, is to sync up the kick drum.
Because the top half can definitely,
Flammy kick drums, that's messed up.
I played in Bright Eyes for about a year. We toured.
I saw you play with them, I think.
Some double drums, and that was, that was always the challenge. Rachel was way on the other side of the stage, and I would look over there and like watch her kick just to make sure that we were syncing. I'm sure the sound.
Yeah, but you made an album with 2 other drummers, actually. What am I thinking? You made Drumgasm.
That was him.
with Zach and Matt.
Yeah, what an experience that was. Wow, that was like being in a horse race and like watching the 2 horses in front of you just like neck and neck, just pushing each other. And I'd be like, okay, let's slow it down. I can hear there's one part of the recording where, so it's panned, like Zach, me, or Zach's in the middle and then me and Matt are panned. And there's one song for about a minute and 30 seconds I can hear, like I start playing like a more groove-oriented beat. And it takes them that whole time, like a minute and a half. And then they finally are like, oh, hey, that's cool what she's doing. And they, Zach slows down for maybe 30 seconds. And then he's off to the races again. Yeah, I think We might put that out as like the complete recordings.
But then you'll have to play a show.
We talked about playing a show, like doing a West Coast tour.
Well, I think I told you this story before, but because earlier you were talking about how amazing it is to kind of consider everybody whose life was touched by your music. But I would say that a really important show for me was in 1998. So I guess about 21 years ago, because it was in the fall. You were playing with Quasi and Elliott at the Metro in Chicago, and I was living in Milwaukee at the time. I was 18, and a friend of mine and I drove down. It was sold out, but we found tickets. We just drove down because we knew we would figure out how to get in, whether it was sneaking in or whatever.
I'm just having an image of us pulling up in our Astro van, our rented dark blue Astro van. Jason Ward, our sound person, tour manager, everything. That's the day when you just went with one person and you did everything else yourself. But yeah, that was...
And we found somebody to sell us tickets, got in, Quasi had just started playing, and then Elliott came out and played bass with you guys for a couple songs, I think.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away. It was the first time I'd seen you play drums live. And it was such, like, I can remember the songs that were played. I can remember everything about the show. I remember who else was in the audience, this weird couple ahead of us in like Hawaiian shirts. And then at the end, Elliott was like, all right, any requests? And I requested Division Day. At least that's what I remembered. And you played it, and you were singing the backups. It was awesome. And then recently I was like, am I really remembering it? And then I went online and there's a recording of it.
Oh my gosh.
So
really?
I listened to it.
That's very cool.
But that was such a meaningful show to me, and you've done so many things that have meant a lot to me personally and
thanks.
to lots of people that have listened to this show. So Janet Weiss, thank you so much for doing this. I'm so glad we did it.
Yeah, we finally did it.
We did it.
You know what? That all meant a lot to me too. And I think people can see that, when
Absolutely, and they can hear
when
it,
someone's
feel it.
true and doing what they love and being, I don't know.
You were radiating a power, a special, like a joyful power.
Yeah, I just feel like a superpower on stage. I feel, that I don't think about what I look like or what I had for lunch or anything like, it's just, I'm in the moment. That's the goal anyway, is just to be in the moment and, completely at the service of the music, and having it pass through you and come to life. And usually the people I play with are, similar, and we all sort of get off on that. And that's what drives us. All the other stuff is, can be really challenging, the relationship stuff, but really to have that is, that's just the best. It's just the best to be on stage with people and you're just, sort of like this thing's bigger than you, and it's, all of you together, the people in the audience and the people on stage, and just something magical happens.
Well, I can't wait to see you on stage again.
I'll get there. Yeah, we had, it's like...
You had a tour booked.
Yeah, I know. It was a double duty tour, so I'm like, oh, when am I going to be able to do double duty? Because I want to do that tour again. But I think it's going to happen. It's going to happen for sure. I just want to make sure that it's, I feel a little bit like I'm going to be like, the freak, like people are going to be watching, like, can she still do it? So I want to make sure that I still got it before I get up there, but I'm going to work as hard as I have to, really, to be able to do it.
Well, how did it feel yesterday?
It felt good. It's like my kick foot is the foot that I broke, or the leg that I had what's called a tibial plateau surgery. So there's like a big plate and a bunch of screws in right under my knee. So I think the bone is healed, which is incredible that it takes only 10 weeks to grow your bone back together. Very science fiction when that happens. Like, Star Trek, I'm not like a Trekkie, but I do know there's like some wand or something and they hold it over the injury and then it just heals. Like that really kind of happens.
If you were to give somebody a drum lesson, what would you do on the first lesson?
I guess my drum lesson would be sort of what my first drum lesson was. The one that I would give is kind of one that I got, which was just to be very encouraging in the respect of like, there's not one way to do this. Mm-hmm. And I think as a girl starting to play music, there's like, you get a lot of like, you don't know how to do it. Like, and I feel like I would just say there isn't one way to do it. So you can't do it wrong. Like, it's not possible. The way you set everything up, like, look at all these different drummers. Like, this person, really accomplished person, does it this way, and this really accomplished person does it this other way. And all these limitations that people have on them make them very unique. And being unique is the goal. Mm-hmm. That's my lesson, is that being unique
people are
is
unique.
The goal.
It's just like highlighting that uniqueness.
But don't you think the drum world is a bit antiquated in that way? And just that, like, there is this one way to do it, And, like...
I think that so we were talking before about this contradiction wherein drummers need to support everybody in the band. So you need to have a certain level of empathy and understanding of other people. Mm-hmm. Yet we're also protected emotionally in a way that other musicians aren't. Like, there's an apparatus in front of us, and you can retreat behind technique and be technically good without being vulnerable and letting your uniqueness show.
Right.
And I think of all instruments, drums lend themselves to that the most because they're kind of just naturally the most athletic instrument. Mm-hmm. So people that want to play an instrument but are more, athletic minded can sometimes gravitate towards the drums.
Right.
But what I always find really strange is like when you do take drum lessons and like we were talking about rudiments before, there are some schools of thought and literal schools where you're expected to learn your rudiments before you can progress to the drum set.
Right.
And to me, that's like, if you're a baby trying to learn how to spell before you learn how to talk. Like, no, you have to learn how to communicate first, and then later on, maybe you learn how to read and write. But by the time most kids learn how to read and write, you already know how to tell stories. You already have an imagination that you can express.
I mean, I just think there are many different ways to go about.
Yeah.
It's like I was on tour in 2 weeks. Like, I didn't have any time to learn rudiments. I had to I probably learned everything completely wrong because
Well, there is no wrong, right?
Yeah. So, like wrong
maybe something
in quotes.
The only way that, the only kind of quote wrong way is if it's in an ergonomically inefficient way where it's not sustainable or it hurts your body over the long term. But
even that stuff, like all the punk bands were doing all that stuff and, killing themselves. Like, singers who couldn't, lost their voice and drummers, we'd have blisters all over our hands and...
Not even punk bands, though. I mean, like Phil Collins, who has spoken to that microphone once, he can't even play drums anymore. His back is so messed up from sitting wrong, and hitting really fucking hard.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes around the board. And then, like, conversely, someone like DJ Bonebreak plays really efficiently and properly. So I don't know. But I know what you're saying. It's like some people just develop their own way of doing it. Or even like we were talking about the Shags before, but like I think they're one of the best bands ever. And like that's an extreme example, but yeah.
I mean, I do think my perspective is, the self-taught, no technique taught to me and just figuring it out as I went along. And just my focus was on like developing some voice. Like, how do I express myself on the drums? I wasn't thinking of it like technique. I was just thinking of it like, I want to express myself. And,
Right.
how I feel and how I want the song to feel. And I was sort of like in control of how the song was going to feel. And I delved into that. And that's what I would try to convey in a lesson, is that the drummer has a lot of, has a big hand in contributing to what the song will be, what the music will be and feel like, the emotional part of the song. Mm-hmm. And so however you can learn to tap into your emotions, with some do that with technique, some do that, playing soft, some play hard.
Yeah.
But that sort of voice is what I would try to teach. And then let the person kind of explore, and figure that out. I mean, I do think to be a drummer, it's better if you're not self-conscious about being loud, because that is one thing that, like, it's just a loud instrument. It's hard to turn it down. And, the few times I went to the rock camp for girls, and there were just some girls that were, they got so embarrassed when they would play. And
because they're socially conditioned to be deferential or quiet.
Yeah, they're just, girls aren't taught to be loud, to be aggressive. The word aggressive for a woman is like a real, knock.
Negative, right.
A real negative. And I think, I definitely see it as an incredible positive and wanted to showcase that, like, that aggressiveness, and that, can be really powerful. And that's a good thing to teach kids. But some of them just, drums are not for everybody. We are a certain breed of person, and although we find different ways of expressing ourselves, it's always going to be loud.
I was thinking more about what you said, about finding a voice and expressing how you feel inside. Mm-hmm. And I do think, like on drums, technique can be used as a vehicle to that, or a tool to express yourself, but it can also be a way to retreat from your feelings, because
to hide a little bit.
Because you can focus on technical proficiency for your entire life if you want. And
I think it's just your values, like what are you trying to do with your craft, if you want to call it that.
I think that makes sense.
My favorite bands and my favorite drummers were not the super technical drummers. As I got more into drums, maybe I could appreciate that a little bit more. I feel like I have to hear that emotional component, that human component. I need to hear that to really have it, like, completely excite me. And so I sort of took that and ran with it. And it also, the bands I was in didn't require, like, super technique. It all probably would have hindered us, actually. Mm-hmm. I just was all like personality, like, what's going to make, what can I do to make the drums fit with this song and sound cool, and make the song not sound like another song,
Just imagine what the Beatles would have sounded like if Neil Peart would have been the drummer. It just wouldn't have been the Beatles.
I'm sure a lot of people want to hear that, and
somebody has done it. Make that happen.
I bet it's been done. The mashup.
Well, anything else that we want to add today?
No, I think we covered a lot.
Well, thanks, Janet. You're always welcome to come back if you think of something else.
Okay, cool. Part 2, someday in the future.
Yeah.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.